hassle to Peter Bierlach, but I'm surprised that he was trying, really, because Kobayashi losing another position, sadly, to the Rebellion Williams Esports team. They've got a couple of GT cars just ahead of them as well. Pit stops coming through from our GT competitors, but I think there's definitely a different advantage between the fuel mileage that a Ferrari can do versus a Porsche. The Corvettes are doing what looks to be 15 laps, and whereas the Porsches can only manage 14, although Tommy Usgaard did manage a 15-lap stint. Ferraris, in the hands of David Tunitza, only managed 14, and he actually did a 12-lap stint according to my timing screen. So there isn't a huge amount difference in terms of strategy between our GT drivers, but it is Ayachan Juven who did not win the Porsche, should have won the Porsche Virtual, the Super Cup, the Mobile One Super Cup that was put on for the Real World Super Cup drivers, should have won it, and had a great battle with Larry ten Voorde, and eventually just kind of lost it because he was a bit too aggressive, right, really, more than anything else, and Larry was a bit more calm. Let's get another legend on the line, and a very good friend of myself and Alan McNish. It is Emanuele Pirro.
Five-time Le Mans winner, but also someone that's won in every category I think that he's ever raced in is Emanuele Pirro. Emanuele, how are you?
I'm good, Alan. Good to talk to you. I would have preferred you just to introduce me as a good friend. But yeah, I'm very good, and I'm actually enjoying this race very, very much.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see it, isn't it? The racing, did you see the start and the way they approached everything? I can tell you Eduardo Freitas is over there controlling things in exactly the same way as if we had been at Le Mans itself. But the racing and the action, it's just fantastic.
Yes, it is, and honestly, I just gained a little bit of experience in this virtual racing in this lockdown period, and I knew very little about it before, but I figured out the only way to make it run properly is to run it exactly as you would run a normal race. Otherwise, it's a mess, and I think for those who are looking at home, they should appreciate how clean and how good racing it is. And this is only happening, A, because the drivers are very professional and very good, and B, because there's a race control behind it, and you just can't mess around.
Yeah, but at the same time, you said you've only just got a little bit of experience. I think you're second in the All-Star Championship, aren't you?
Yes. But this is just a 3-month-old adventure, and if I know a little bit you, I think you share the same feeling and the same attitude. We never stop the desire of learning and challenging ourselves, and we are, since we retired, me a little bit before you, we are doing a lot of different activities with the best approach we can, and this was a new one for me. And initially, at least to me, it was like adapting to something which is not real, and this took quite some time before I could drive a sim in the same way as I would drive a car. Because for those who are listening, and of course you know very well, this is not a game. These cars, they obey to very well-designed law of physics, and it's actually a simulator. And what you see here, the behavior of the car, to me, what is amazing to look at is, you know, the car has got downforce, so it moves over the road and bounces exactly as it does the real car. So after the first initial, let's say, getting confident with different controls and learning what the car needs to be, how the car needs to be driven without your physical feelings, because it's only by looking that you have to guess what the car needs to be driven and how the car needs to be driven, then it's real, driving. So apply the brakes exactly how you should, no more, no less, and apply the steering and the load transfer, and it is actually really, really good. And I think, Alan, I don't know the way you looked at it, but the fact that so many real drivers had started this, sim racing, it gave a lot of credibility to the whole world of sim racing.
Yeah, it's definitely in that respect, but I've just got to sort of step back a second. Just listening to you there, talking about the physics and the way the car was and what you had to do to the aerodynamics and everything else, it just reminds me of some of our debriefs when we're sitting in the front of the truck and we're talking about the real car and what we were doing and what we needed to do for the setup. Petit Le Mans 2008, that sort of thing. You've still got the energy, you've still got the passion, you've still got the competitive instincts that were there when we were duking it out onto the circuit. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we lived, you, myself, and a bunch of others that you have just named before, Tom, Frank, Tom Christensen, Frank Villa, Dindo Capello, Marco Werner. We went through a period, let's say towards the end of our career, because we weren't really juniors by the time we started in the year 2000. Actually, for me, in '99, the sport car adventure. But the way the whole operation was run, and I think the quality of the people involved, Dr. Rurik leading us, and all of us, it really kept us really young. And this is an attitude I still keep inside. I'm now 58, but this morning I've been motocrossing with my son, and you know, you just want to learn every day of your life, and you challenge yourself every day of your life. And we are not millennials, so we haven't been born with computers. I bought my first computer in 1995. So for us, this is something strange. And if you don't keep this attitude of wanting to learn, challenging yourself, and never admit that you are too old. I'm a little different to Jack Hicks, who is my hero, and not only my hero, but you know, he said everybody belongs to his own era. Yeah, but I don't want to give up. I want to keep learning and understanding.
Every era is your era. But you mentioned Frankie and Dindo and Tom and Marco. Coming back to Le Mans itself, tell us one of your favourite moments from the Le Mans 24 hours. Give us a little bit of an insight into what Emanuele Pirro holds close to his heart from Le Mans. Apart from your 5 trophies, by the way.
No, yeah, but you know, Tom won 9, I won 5, you won 3, and so did Dindo and Marco. Frank won 5, but we were a team, and I really mean it. What I'm saying, we were a team, and every car had equal chances to win the race, and it was just a matter of circumstances. The preparation was so accurate, and this is why I really feel I'm blessing. Not too long ago, I had a long telephone call with Dr. Rurik, and you know, with the hindsight, you really appreciate the period we were living. You know, we were pulling each other, we were pushing each other, and we were pulling the rope in the same direction. There was some rivalry, but healthy rivalry, but ultimately we were on board of an incredible operation that kept us on top of the game for that long. So memories. I think the first win. Sometimes I feel like, you know, my 5 victories, it's like I have 5 children. Which one do you prefer? It's hard to pick one. First, it's wonderful because it's the first. To me, the first one with the diesel, and I know we all wanted to be the first one to win a diesel, and
it was you.
You know, the race, yeah, but yeah, you know, being fair, the race developed in a way that we crossed the line first, but it could have been anybody, and this meant very much to me at the time, because it was a one unique opportunity to win with a very different technology, and you know how much I love technology. And actually now, with the way diesel is seen by the world, to me, unfairly, that win means even more. But we just had a good time. I'm just thinking, Alan, because I don't want to get too romantic and too serious. I'm just thinking, you know, this is a virtual race, which is incredibly accurate. Yeah. But you cannot reproduce the driver's parade, and you cannot reproduce a virtual after-race party. And this was a big part of the enjoyment of each Le Mans edition, wasn't it?
It was fantastic. That's exactly right. But I'm sure that maybe in 10 years' time they will have a virtual driver's parade. They will have the virtual scrutineering, and I'm sure we can solve the party side of it as well. But Emanuele, I must thank you very much for your time, for the you talking about the race and also your experiences. But I'd just like to say one thing to everybody back at home. I always look at the mark of a man in terms of how they accept when maybe things don't always go their way. Manueli was talking about some of the races and the victories when we won in 2008 in our car, and it didn't go in the way of Manueli's car. He was the first person to come up and say, congratulations, you guys deserved it. And that to me was a point. Chapeau, Emanuele Pirro, you're a star on the circuit and you're a star off it. Thank you very much.
So are you. Bye-bye, everybody. There's a long way to go, so I'm expecting a lot of stamina from yourself as usual.
See you later, EP.
Bye-bye.
What a guy. What a guy. Brings a smile to my face every time I hear and see from Emanuele Pirro. Such a lovely man, such a lovely family. Great friends with his sons, and always with a story and enthusiasm and energy for anything. And it's so easy, especially for the elder generation, to dismiss sim racing and say, "Oh no, it's not real, and therefore I don't like it." But to see someone like Emanuele throw themselves into it and enjoy it so much, and really become passionate about it, is lovely to see. And chapeau and applause to that. Another wonderful interview. Thank you very much, Alan. We've had a little change in our commentary team. So Chris is headed off for a well-earned rest after the 4 hours that he managed to do. And now we've got Lewis on board. Lewis, you've been sitting watching. What have you learnt as we see here what looks to be a slightly damaged Porsche?
That's the 92, I think.
Just running a little bit deep. And at Mulsanne into the gravel. No harm done, though. Bouncing across a curb. And 92 is being piloted by, let me find
Jeremy Bouteloup.
Oh, Jeremy Bouteloup. He shouldn't be making mistakes. I thought he's got Andrea Lotterer behind him. Bouteloup, very well-known, well-versed sim driver, and that's a little bit of an error there. But overall, Lewis, what you've been watching in the green room, what have you been kind of gleaming and from this experience so far?
We've been through a lot in this. There's been a lot of interesting stuff that's happened. The racing has been a lot cleaner. We were expecting, particularly through the first couple of hours, for maybe some incidents and stuff. Of course, we had a couple, naturally. As you'd expect, having 50 cars all battering themselves around the Circuit de la Sarthe. But still, we get to this point. Everyone's, for the most part, everyone's still going, with the exception of the Alonso team, unfortunately. It's been a lot cleaner. The racing has been incredible. The battle between Tommy Osgaard and Erhan Yujovski earlier in the race for the lead of GTE, absolutely top form. And hopefully that is setting the stage for what is to be the rest of the race, and we can keep that up through the night. The night is where things are going to get very, very interesting.
One of the only cars to have no sim drivers, Penske deciding to get 4 of their drivers into the car, with Juan Pablo Montoya and Simon Pagenaud, both with good experience, but perhaps not the ultimate pace that they need to really compete with the sim drivers. And Simon back in the Team Penske car, and we have got an interview with Roger Penske coming up over the 24 hours. Just a reminder also that in a couple of hours' time we also have a live concert coming from this very studio as well, just as you would see at the Le Mans 24 hours. A headline musical act normally playing just on the outside of the first corner, and a huge crowd go and enjoy and visit that. And it's not just about the racing on circuit, but it is about the full entertainment experience. And so set your dates, set your calendars, set your diaries and alarms for 11 o'clock local time here in France for a little entertainment, a little musical reprise. Sebastian Buemi now in the 8 car. He's taken over from Brendan Hartley. Such a shame to see Brendan go off so early on, so it's really a recovery drive from Buemi, but nice to see nobody bailing out, believing that they have no chance of competing anymore. And we saw a bit earlier on Nuno Pinto jumping into a car that was nearly last of LMP and putting in the fastest lap of the race. Lewis, in terms of what you were kind of gleaming information back in the race in your green room about what was kind of going on strategy-wise, all side by side. Fabrizio Gobi and Esteban Guerri. Guerri goes deep into the Indianapolis, and now to Arnage. He's going to have the inside line to hold that position, and he is doing such a good job. Up to 5th position now for the World Touring Car driver. ahead of the Toyota Gazoo Racing Argentina entry that will have the slipstream going into the Porsche curves, but would be advised not to try and make a move unless he goes around the outside of the first part. Look at the slipstream effect, dragging him up to the tail of the LMP2 car, but decides against it. And Guerri can now set about chasing Alex Siebel in the TDS E-Racing Motul entry. Now, another question for you, Lewis, because I saw that TDS Racing, which I think is the top screen, no, that's Guerri there. So we're seeing Guerri and Gobi in those two screens. But TDS Racing, Alex Siebel, they are all sharing the same sim with his teammates Guido van der Garde and Dennis Jourdain in Saint-Ouen in France. And it is an epic motion simulator that they have back at the factory there. Is that going to help him get a better feel for the car?
Potentially. The thing is with motion simulators is they only have a certain degree of movement and stuff, and that can sometimes throw you off a little bit. So as long as I've set it up right, you would assume they have. Then it will give a slight bit of advantage, more so over a longer run, particularly into the later hours, where you're feeling a bit tired. Your eyes, normally in sim racing, your eyes and hands do all of the work. Your body's not really picking up anything from the car. So with a motion simulator, when you're sliding out of a corner, that almost like wakes you up as it would in a real car. You'd be like, whoa, I need to not slide. So it will help. I have heard from Dennis. I was having a chat with him yesterday, Dennis Jourdain, saying that there are certain issues within that car when it comes down to the millisecond of delay to the monitor, and it only runs at 60 hertz, the monitor, which for those of you sat at home means that the monitor will refresh 60 times, which means in a second, which means that it runs at 60 frames per second. Now that's pretty common for a lot of monitors, but in sim racing as we move forward, there's a lot of a push to move to a much higher refresh rate monitor, meaning you get a much smoother picture and a much faster response time, meaning you can react to things an awful lot quicker.
This is your man. If you want to know anything about the sim racing world, get your questions in for Lewis on #LeMans24 Virtuel. We're going to have lots of time to talk, but he can give you every little technical advancement that's needed to just eke that little bit extra out. You know, they spend so many hours setting up the car in the real world and in the virtual world. Why not try and set up your equipment as well to be as perfect as you can possibly have it? And it's not just your pedals and your steering wheel, but it also is your monitor, or if you choose, your virtual headset, your VR. Not seen many people on VR so far on this one.
No, there is one driver who drives for 2Cs, Rory McDuff. This is an interesting case because most people that I know of, when they have VR, you can see all the drivers and stuff there on the left-hand side, incredible stuff, that he adamantly said that if he tries racing on VR, he is not quicker, not consistent. And I was like, that's very interesting, because I would have assumed having the peripheral vision and having the ability to look around would make things a bit easier. But if you get used to racing on a single monitor or 3 screens or whatever, you kind of, that's how you approach the sim. And so having the ability to look around is almost like oh no, I'm not comfortable with this. I want my locked-in vision.
I love a VR headset, but it does make you feel a little bit sick sometimes. So you do have to get yourself used to it, and it gives you that perception. We were talking a little bit earlier with Alan McNish about the ability to turn your head to see what's on the left and right-hand side of your car. If you don't necessarily have an audio cue, which of course in RF2, in the platform you don't, but you can have something added to the game to allow you to know when there's a car to your left, to your right, chasing you down, the gaps. So many developed systems in the third party to enhance the immersion of driving in the simulator. Yippee Yee seems to have been in 13th for the whole of his stint so far. Hasn't moved up, but I think he's been just chasing down the Panis car, the Racing 888, ahead of him. And now he's getting to a point where he may well be able to fire and get himself up a position, but they're going to soon be caught by our leading car, Lando Norris. By the way, gap to leader, Lando versus Brauner, 19.1. When we got into the stint, it was nearly half a minute, and so Lando is losing time to Brauner. Now, who's got to go into that car after Brauner? Rory's going to go next.
Rory's taken over in 8 laps time. And you can see, with that gap coming down, even in the first sector on this lap, there was 1 second between them. So that's come down a monster spread. Obviously, traffic plays its part. You know, it is a part of endurance racing. You have to balance yourself through traffic, and sometimes you can be a bit more calm around it. I know Devin, maybe not so calm. He will go for it, but that's where he gains so much time by taking some risks that he kind of is aware of. Another half a second in the middle sector, so it's already 1.5 this lap, closing in monstrally. Another driver who's going through a bit of a phase of speeding up and heading through the field as well. For Team Rocket Zancho, Jan von der Heide. He's gained 3 positions since he's got in the car. That car is heading towards the front.
Yeah, I saw a tweet earlier on from somebody very, very impressed by what Jenson Button's Team Rocket can do. And we've seen kind of them nearly cycle through all of their drivers. Just one sim driver left to jump into that car.
Matt Richards is the other one that's not doing it.
And we're watching here Thibaut Casabon, who is sitting in 12th position with Yippee Yee just behind, and that is the 31 car that had a drive-through penalty. So that's why now down 2 minutes 34. Now what's happening here?
Simon Pagenaud, what's it? Oh.
That's impressive. Pagenaud looks like he's doing a sim change. I don't think I've ever seen this before.
This is interesting. I'm wondering if his wheel has failed and he's trying to plug it back in, and you can see there he's reattaching the cables. Like you say, it is a sim change, so he's moved one off to the right-hand side. I don't know many people who have a backup simulator just to lob straight in the way. We'll see if that works. There you go. You can see the wheel calibrating there. So that's the wheel taking over. I believe that's a Fanatec wheel that he's got there. You can see them pulled off outside of Arnage. I have never seen that before, and I'm not sure. I wasn't sure if that was going to work. Well done.
That is
impressive.
That is very, very impressive. Of course, the computer stays logged on to the server, so he's not losing connection. He may have. That smoke saying he's overheated?
It's overheating because he's been stationary whilst he's done that, which is fine because they run, obviously, like in the real world, they run the cars quite close. That will probably go by the time he's onto the Mulsanne, hopefully.
And it does look like it's working. The wheel may not be calibrated in the same way, and here it is again. Looks like the same wheel as the one in the background, so it should register in the same way.
It might be slightly different because I'm assuming. Now, I'm not going to get into this now, so don't panic, because it's not the early hours of the morning. I'm assuming he was on a direct drive wheel, which is like the most expensive type of wheel you've got, and he's moved on to what would be a belt-driven wheel. So it's less, it looks like anyway, it will be less force feedback that he's going to get from that, less detail in what's going on. So maybe that's going to take him a little while to get used to. You see him coming into the pit lane. I'm assuming he hit the wall on the exit of Arnage as well. So he's got to come in to do a bit of repair time, which is going to be bad for his engine, because if he's already been stationary, he's already overheating, and now he's got to be stationary for what could be a good few minutes, depending on how hard he's hit the wall. This could not be good for Team Penske.
Into the pits now. What happens next? He's jumping out of the car, so somebody else, I think, will be taking this car out. What's he getting the keyboard now from the other sim to be able to plug into the computer. Don't know why. It looks like a Bluetooth keyboard. So
yeah,
actually
so it's wireless.
Still be,
yeah, correct.
It's just in the wrong place. He needed an assistant there to come in and help him. But
I'd want an assistant to come in and help me change my rig.
Yeah.
My goodness. The only time that I've seen anything that crazy was the 2012 Indian Grand Prix, and Lewis Hamilton came in and he needed a wheel change. Yeah, the steering wheel. So he comes in, he parks in his box, he takes the wheel off, passes it to a guy on his right, grabs a new wheel from the guy on his left, plugs it in, and he's gone in 3 seconds. I was like, that's mad. That from Pagenaud, that is just as impressive in my opinion.
And I don't think that's something you would rehearse, is it?
No, no.
But it clearly had the thought, a real forethought to have that completely set up as a rig that he could jump straight into.
Absolutely.
Very, very impressive. Here is the leader of the GTE category, Ayçin Juven, the Turkish driver, the very first non-French driver to win the Carrera Cup in France, and actually won it twice, and now moves into the Super Cup for, I think, his second season. But in iRacing, he has a rating of 8,000. So if you know your iRacing, you know that that is alien-like. I don't know how much experience he's got in R Factor 2, but presumably a decent amount, because not only is he leading the race, he has the fastest lap of the race with a 3:48.9, and he's stretched his advantage to up to 17 seconds over the Corvette that his teammate was racing. That is Besch now in Romain Grosjean's Corvette team. But the big gap, remember these two cars were stuck together when they were in the hands of Tommy Ustad and I can't remember now who was in Jovski, of course. Yeah. And they were together, and now a 17-second advantage. It's always the way. Alain Moniz would tell you the same. It's not about your fastest driver, it's about your weakest driver in terms of performance across a 24-hour race.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was telling you about this before. I've done my little bit of endurance racing and sim racing, and normally in that scenario, I am the slowest driver, normally by around a second. And the thing is the pressure that is you get basically all of it dumped onto you, because the fast drivers are sort of like, well, you know, we'll do our bit, we'll set out in front, and we'll hand over to the car to you when we're in the lead, and it's fine. And you get in and you think, oh my goodness me, I can't do this. But you never know.
We saw the car of Team Penske heading back out onto circuit. Simon Pagenaud had only done 6 laps of his stint, but great organisation by Team Penske to have Juan Pablo Montoya standing by, ready to jump into the car. So a quick pit stop wouldn't take any longer. It's put them out of sequence, but now the Colombian driver based out of Miami is aboard, and we can chat with Simon Pagenaud to find out exactly what happened to him. What an impressive sim change that was. Haley is with him.
So we're just going to go live with Simon Pagenaud from Team Penske, car number 6. Now, Simon, can you just tell us what just happened there?
Oh my God, that was probably the most stressful, one of the most stressful moments I've experienced. I'm lucky I prepare well for racing in general. I had a spare chair and a spare steering wheel from a friend just in case something happened to my steering wheel, of course. It seized. But luckily, yeah, revving, it was on the limiter. I couldn't do anything, which was very stressful. And then I grabbed the other seat and plugged it back in, managed to get back to the pits. I knew I wouldn't have force feedback reconnecting it because I tested that just in case. But lucky for me, when Pablo was ready to go, so we made the driver change, and now I can reorganize everything with the new steering wheel.
That was a super impressive turnaround, so well done for that. So as you say, you know, you just ended your stint. How did it go for you prior to that little sim change, obviously?
Well, I've put a lot of hours into it. I've trained about 150 hours on the R-Factor 2, which I've never been on that platform in the past. So it took me a while to adjust and get used to. And you know what's really difficult is it's open setup. So you can basically spend the entire day just trying to fine-tune the car, trying to find a little bit of speed on the straightaway, in the corners. And it's a long track, so one lap is 3:25. So it takes you a lot of hours to get it right. So, but with Team Penske, we came here to support, the ACO and IMSA. The new sporting regulation for 2022 is spectacular. So, as a team with Acura, we wanted to be present and to support. It's a pleasure. I tell you what, I haven't been in Le Mans for 10 years. So it's just been fun to be able to drive the straightaway of La Sarthe.
So obviously, talking about Team Penske, you're one of 2 teams that are actually driving without a sim racer. It was kind of a big gamble, or are you pretty, confident without having one?
Well, it's not a gamble. It's quite frankly, we didn't have the ambition to go and win the race without a sim race. So Team Penske, we have phenomenal professional drivers, and we represent the brand, and we represent Team Penske and Acura, and they wanted us to be in the race, and we wanted to be in the race as well. So we said, okay, let's just go and let's support the cause as well with COVID-19, and we'll be around for 24 hours. So our goal is to finish the race, have fun, and represent as well as we can.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Simon.
Thank you. See you soon.
And that just displays, number one, the professionalism of everybody taking part in this race, and number two, the preparation. 150 hours worth of testing on a platform he'd never raced before, and to have a spare rig ready to go. He'd even tested how to change it.
I do not know many people that have tried that. Like you say, the foresight to have gone up to a mate and gone, do you mind, are you using that this weekend? Because I could really do with a backup one that I could just throw into place. Of course, this is like, I would say it's lucky in a sense, but to have another rig in that format, one that's quite light and quite easy to pick up and basically throw in place. They're not light, by the way. That'll weigh a good few kilos, I'll give him that.
He's a racing driver.
Yeah, of course. But the monitors weren't attached to it, so thankfully that's one thing we didn't have to worry about. So again, just throw the wheel and stuff out of the way and plug the new one in. But man, I have never seen that before. Like, I'm shocked.
And it does remind me a little bit of when Audi first changed the rear-end gearbox of their R8 so fast, and everyone was in disbelief. It's going to be a new thing now. Everyone's going to have to reserve simulator in the background. And we know Ferrari have got a whole sim set up ready to go, but that would require a lot different because it's a different connection. That was just so impressive. So some redemption for Simon Pagenaud after various things that he's done over the last couple of weeks, but respect for how he's been, and hopefully that's asked some of your questions, because hashtag Le Mans 24 lit up with all of that. Now, we've only had one retirement out of this race, unfortunately, with Fernando Alonso, and it meant that we never saw Rubens Barrichello at the wheel, but we can speak to him now with Alan McNish.
It's quite a few years ago then a little Brazilian driver came across to make his way in the UK, starting to cut his teeth in motorsport. Now, I have to be honest, the first time I saw him, I thought, yeah, that kid's fast. British F3, delivered. Formula 3000, delivered. But 11 Grand Prix victories to his name, Rubens Barrichello. Great to see you, and still alive and kicking and got all that energy still in your system.
Hey, Alan, it's lovely to see you. You know how much I enjoy talking to you when we get together. It's good fun. I tell you, it's good to hear that you said something good, because my heart is broken, my friend. I wish I was in the race. It was such a disappointment. 2 weeks of trying, and unfortunately we had this problem with Fernando. And then, you know, I think people already understood, but he was already in the pits when he got the penalty, and he couldn't switch it off. So basically, he didn't allow him to refuel, and then we stop and we out of the race. And you know, all I want is like, give us like 20 laps behind, man, but let me drive. I organize everything for me to be good. And you know, it was hours and hours of practice, so it's a pity that we're not in.
Yeah, that's a little bit like Le Mans, but if it had been in September in the real race, you would have came into the pits, you'd have served the penalty, but you could have got fuel enough to do one lap, and then you would have had to come in under full green racing to take the time penalty as well. So in that situation, it's something that I'm sure, like in the real world, things would develop forward. But you've been quite active in all this sim stuff, I see. If I watch online, then Rubens Barrichello's popping up there as well.
Yeah, it's I love this. My son, my two kids, you know, Fernando and Eduardo, they've been having fun. And with the pandemic and everything, it was good to have this going, because we had to be home. And I paint the house. I, you know, cut the dogs. You can see, you know, dogs here. So we're having, you know, maximum attitude with this. But the sim, I even got a new sim that it was for me to be, you know, get going faster. Alonso was so competitive, and it was nice. We put up together such a nice team, and I tell you, it's been fun. And we're organizing already some the 24 hours next week for iRacing, because it's frustrating not to be in, man. And if the organizers hear me, please give us like 30 laps behind, but put us back in race. We want to go racing.
I'll go and shout for that one for you. But Haley, Do you need anything painted in your house? Because it's clearly Rubens has got a capability to do a little bit of handiwork around the house.
I know, he's a handy, sounds pretty, you know, he knows a bit of handiwork as well. It's pretty impressive. I mean, as having, already driven the 24 hours of Le Mans, I mean, did you have that tiny bit more experience when you were obviously driving 24 of Le Mans Virtual?
Oh, the other day I didn't see it coming, but I did 105 laps of testing in a full day. So obviously it's from competitiveness that I wanted to do well. The setup of the car was a little bit understeery for me, so I tried something within the game, steering wheel action, braking performance, and things like this. So and being there, I raced in 2017. And I tell you, Le Mans, I have something with Le Mans that it's a passion, it's a love, and I wanna be back there. So to be on this Virtual, it's just a shame that it's gonna take a full year for us to race it again. But it's been an honor to be practicing and to have so much involvement. We had engineers, we had PR guy, we had we had good racing drivers, so it was nice. It was a good full 2 weeks, and I'm really sorry that we're not taking part right now.
You're meant to be retired. You're meant to be taking things easily. You're not meant to be putting in that sort of level of commitment into it. You'll show the young guys up.
Hey, Alan, I was in Australia for the S5000 when the whole thing started, and then I would fly to Argentina to race the Super TC 2000, then back to Brazil to race the stock cars, and I'm waiting for you to invite me to something. I want to be back in Europe racing something. What about if we put a team together? What do you think?
I think it's a great idea. What we'll do is the Legends Trophy at the Scottish Motor Racing Club at Knockhill. We can maybe get DC and Dario into the game as well. What about that? A foursome, that'd be fantastic.
And a little bit of whiskey on the side.
We'll get David to sort that out, I'm sure.
I mean, you can count on me as always,
Yeah, that's one thing we definitely can, and also with the energy and passion. I don't think there's a driver that comes out of Brazil that hasn't got energy and passion. I know that personally very well, but at the same time, you've got it with abundance, and it's fantastic to see you. And it's also great to know that you're going to be coming back in the virtual, but also in the real world as well. One last question from me, though. Who's quickest in the Barrichello family? Is it still you?
I tell you, I'm just hanging on, because my son Eduardo is doing so well. He almost did the 24-hour as well for the Toyota Gazoo Argentinian race, and I'm hanging on, Alan. I became 48 last week, but as you know, it's just in here, man. I just love this, and I have gratitude in my heart from still having the passion and physically being able to drive cars. So Virtual is just possibly the future, but I'm on it. For another 10 years I can do Rio still.
We'll hold you to that one, definitely. Another 10 years at least. Rubens, thanks very much. See you soon, chap.
Ciao, nice to talking to you.
Really sad not to experience Rubens Barrichello on the Le Mans Circuit de la Sarthe, but unfortunately his car retiring out of the race. And would have been nice to hear from Fernando as well, but difficult man to lock down. And having worked with him at Toyota for the Dakar, I can tell you, I was working alongside him, and I must have said about 3 words to him in 2 weeks at the Dakar. A difficult man to lock down and have a chat with. But actually, when you do, a very nice fellow. But so sad that that car is the only car to actually retired out of the race, and simply because it couldn't get back to the pits after various issues. And a possibility of having the same issue with Simon Pagenaud. If Pagenaud had not got a spare steering wheel, that would have been retirement, because he wouldn't have been able to get back to the pits, therefore not change the driver, and that would have been out.
There might have been one other way, but there would have been laps and laps.
Could you drive with a keyboard?
To be fair, yes, you actually can. Which I had a few people have jokingly raced in it, but not ideal. It's a bit bad for tyre wear, I've been told. No, so from that sense, you could have effectively, I think Chris had said before about pulling the plug. So he could have effectively disconnected his computer from the internet, reconnected, joined back into the server whilst fixing the wheel problem, and then that would have been, he would have to do a full-out lap again. It would have not been an ideal scenario, and they would have lost multiple laps further through that. So not ideal. Wouldn't really want to do that. But you know, you kind of do what you have to do to stay in the race, I guess.
Interesting that Lando Norris's pace at the early part of the stint was really not there, but he's just come into the pits, and his middle sector of the lap in was his fastest of the fastest of the race. It wasn't a full lap, but it was a good lap at the end of his stint, so the end of the tyres and end of the fuel mileage. He was well up there. Gregor Hutu has just taken over. We need a whole half an hour to talk about Gregor Hutu. So next time we flick onto Team Redline, we'll have a good chat. We know, I think, also that Devin Browner is going to be out of that car, because I think he's done a quadruple stint.
Correct.
And so we should be seeing a change in the 2Cs motorsport machine. We are watching Nikodym Wisniewski, a long-time member of the Williams Esports team, coming into the pits. Wisniewski coming in from 8th spot, having just been passed by Jan van der Heide. And are we going to see a driver change there? He's got a water bottle in the right position. He doesn't need to get out the seat to grab that. Preparation is key. And I think he'll sit in the car and wait. And here is our leader. And look at that, the team that we haven't yet seen Abdul Al Khalifa in the car. Don't know huge amounts about his sim racing experience. But we do know Ollie Rowland's very fast, and we do know the other two in that team are very fast. So maybe Khalifa, I don't know if it's the same Khalifa that's been running in SRO series, but we have had one there, yeah.
It is that, yeah. He's struggled to get into trouble with the car. But
leave the stage.
I'm sure once he's got into the car, once he's got rhythm, I'm sure it'll be fine. The thing is, they'll be telling him to, like, just get in the car, just do laps, just cycle around, don't crash it, because that is where we lose the time.
Absolutely. So pit stops are happening right now, and cars are heading back out onto circuit. We are kind of in the midst of the pit stops as well. So some of our LMP cars that have maybe only managed 9 or 8 laps on that first stint are the first ones to come in. We do know that Ollie Rowland managed to do 10 laps in his first stint, which was very, very impressive. And what that has meant is that car is one of the last to pit. Also, Esteban Guerri is still aboard the Baicoles car. We expect to see him in pit lane in a few moments' time in the 4 machine that sits in 3rd position. So we await to see that happening. And they may well be advised to get into the pits pretty soon. Leading in GTE, Matthias Besch for Romain Grosjean. I think the Porsche must have just pitted. Yeah, Guven's down to 3rd spot. So that's slightly mixed up things there. And Porsche looks like they're kind of waning a little bit from their initial position. The Corvettes are coming on strong.
The Corvette's race pace seems to be very, very tasty indeed. Now, we did have a little bit of a conversation with Risto Capet, who drives the R8G Esports team, and he was saying that there was potential that that car could do 15 laps in comparison to the other cars doing 14 laps. Now, how that plays into pace and stuff over the entire run, that's the question. Because 15 laps, he was telling me it was roughly 59.5 minutes. Just shy of an hour. Now, if you can make that stick, if you can also account for the pit lane time, which is 79 seconds for a full fuel, full tyres as well, when you take that into account, it passes at over an hour. It means that you go through the 24-hour race, you stop 22 times, obviously not stopping in the first and final. That is monster. If all of the Corvette cars can do that, that is a big advantage.
Absolutely. So just going through this pit stop cycle for the LMP cars, mixing up the gaps at the moment. We do expect to see Devin Browner into the pits this time by. He is on his 10th lap. This is the 4th of his stints as well, so almost certainly is going to be handing over to, you said, Roy McDuff?
McDuff, correct.
Yeah. So that should be happening any moment now. and he's at the Porsche curves now, so he's going to have about a minute to get into pit lane. Most of the other drivers have already pitted, so Gregor Hutu at the moment is 1 minute behind Brauner. Once that cycles through, Gregor is going to have about a 17-second lead, I think. Gregor, the godfather of esports, kind of racing esports before esports was even a thing.
Oh, like we said earlier, nearly 20 years in sim racing. He has been at the top for pretty much all of that. A 5 times iRacing World Champion, which, trust me, that is hard to win once. Not 5 times. Absolutely dominant. Took many race wins there. Also qualified for, in 2016, I think it was, the Formula E Vegas Visa E-Race. Qualified for that. Bearing in mind that's the top of R Factor 2. Only 10 people went into that. He is
and stop before the finish line.
Crazy.
All cars on track to queue up behind the leader. Pit entry is closed. We have a technical issue with the computers. All cars to queue up behind the leader. Finish your lap. Leader will stop before the finish line. Leader will stop before the finish line.
Eduardo Freitas.
78.
Leader, slow down. We need to queue all cars behind the leader. Pit entry is closed. Pit entry is closed.
Oh, pit entry is closed, so that means we have a red flag situation. We wondered whether this was going to happen. Just like in the real world, when we have barrier repairs needed and we needed to clear the circuit, there was this possibility that we have technical issues and we have to red flag the session. As you saw, the race was still going on, so this has been done as a precautionary measure to make sure racing is fair. Issue though, pit lane is closed and Brauner was due into the pits that lap.
Yeah, now this is curious with how it's going to work. Obviously, they have practiced a restart throughout the testing. It's been one of the main focuses for them. This was almost like I wouldn't say we were counting on it happening, but we were preparing for it, because if we aren't, it takes an awful long time. So they've gone through the preparation with all of the drivers. It's been a mandated thing that they have to do. And so through that, I'm sure they'll know what's going on. The question comes with the red flag. If we're going to have to, I'm assuming we'll leave, we'll restart the server, we'll get everything reset, and then we'll return to the time that we're currently at. Which means for Devin, I'm not sure in the rules if he has to be the one to restart this car, as he's the one that's been in it when the red flag was called, or whether into the next session he can pass it over to his teammate Rory McDuff, who is going to take over the car right now.
But more than that, if he has to do another lap with this car, he won't have enough fuel to get to the pits.
This is the thing. If the server's restarted, he should be able to basically get a brand new car.
Okay.
And effectively, like, i.e., full fuel, tyres, etc., like as if he's been in the pit stop, because it's effectively like a complete race restart, in the sense of they can imagine in the real life the red flag comes out. You can still kind of touch the cars, you can still do your pit sequence.
Yeah, exactly. So if we have a red flag sequence in the WEC, there are certain things that you can do to your car. Change tyres, for instance, and generally refueling is not allowed, but that is due to the safety of refueling in a kind of half-parked Ferme situation. So potentially he could be on a 5th stint if he has to restart, or perhaps the car has to restart. There is race control. You can see them working through the technical issues that we have here, but this is no different to what we have in the real world. So as we get this sorted, let's go and chat to a very well-known engineer from Audi Sport and Le Mans Days. She won it, Lena Gade.
I'm live with Lena Gade, the first female race engineer to win the 24 Hours of Le Mans, was with Audi. You're equally the ambassador of the FIA Commission for Women in Motorsport, and you're the chair of the FIA GT Commission. That is a mouthful. Firstly, Lena, how are you doing, and where are you watching this 24 Hours of Le Mans Virtual from?
I am really, really good. I'm currently at home in London, staying with my mum. I'm watching from home, actually.
And so as someone who's very familiar with 24 Hours of Le Mans, how do you find the 24 Hours of Le Mans virtual edition?
So actually, I never really watched any virtual racing until probably only about a month and a half ago. And that was because one of the guys that works in my department actually was racing in a mini series at Monza, and it is hugely addictive. I think it's great, actually, that something like this is in existence and people have thought about it, just because this weekend would have been amazing. The race was supposed to be happening. All the plans have been made since Le Mans last year, people making all their preparations, and that sort of got taken away. So this is a great alternative, and I think e-racing has a massive future in the racing series all around the world, so it's great.
Yeah, and it's obviously great to see so many professional drivers taking part on this. I mean, when you saw the lineup of drivers, what did you think? What were your impressions of that?
So I follow the 24 Hours Le Mans on Instagram, and I could see how many drivers were being announced, and it was driver after driver after driver. I mean, it's an opportunity for so many drivers out there to take part in this iconic race. But without having to actually go there, and also having to ask permission from their teams and things like that. And it's obviously, I mean, there's sponsors and stuff that are probably do have a say in all of this, but it's great that they can go and see what the circuit is like. Hopefully they catch the bug that so many of us have had, having gone to Le Mans for the first time, either as spectators or competitors, and then taking part in this incredible race.
Let's hope they do. And one particular driver who you're quite familiar with, as you were former teammates, is of course Andre Lotterer.
Yeah.
Will you be following him?
Yeah, so actually I know so many of the drivers throughout the field. There's the guys from Multimatic, the entire girls crew that's out there in both the GTs and in the P2 car. Obviously Andre, there's so many. I mean, I can't even mention all of them. It's great to be able to see it and see how everybody's doing.
So yeah, you did mention the LMP car, which is Richard Mille Racing, all-female lineup, and even the sim racer is a female sim racer as well. I mean, how important is it to have that presence, not only at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, obviously, but in the virtual world as well, for women?
I mean, you know, it's huge. E-racing, sim racing has all absolutely taken off, and it's one area where women can take part as well. They're not precluded from it. I think it's really important to have those crews there. It would have been great this weekend to have seen how those two cars were going to be doing. We've just got to wait till September for that to happen. But it's really cool that Le Mans will feature female crews, and I'm not saying that just because I'm waving the flag for women in racing and things like that. I think it's really vital that we do see women in these high profile sports and doing well, because we've all got a place in this business. I mean, I hope that I've shown that it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. You can come along and you can be really successful if you work super hard and you're prepared and you put everything into these races, especially this one.
And leave a lasting impression, because Alan McNish actually did say that you brought an extra dynamic to the team. You had, another kind of way of working, and it really kind of boosted the team.
I don't know about that. I mean,
Alan?
I really hope that anybody that had been in my shoes would have taken every opportunity that Audi had given them to be prepared to do that race. And I know what I put in and the things that I sacrificed. It was an incredibly intense period of time during my time at Audi Sport, and I loved every minute of it. There were times when I was a bit more sort of negative about the whole thing, and when things go wrong in races, you're kind of tearing your hair out wondering what's going on. But it's so important as a race engineer to be able to lead a team, to be able to trust all the guys around you, to let them believe that they are doing the best job they can and that they're all working for the one goal. And I hope that's what I did, and I hope that that's what I still do with the job that I'm doing now. I'm still race engineering over in IMSA. We're getting back to racing at the beginning of July, so looking forward to that, and it's going to be a huge amount of fun.
And, obviously esports being a lot more accessible, are you thinking, are you hoping to see more women maybe get into motorsports via the esports route?
I think that would be great, actually. It won't be the first time that it's happened. The Nissan group, that's how Jan Mardenborough came through the ranks, having won some e-racing, and there was an actual program for all of that to happen. So it's possible, it can be done. Racing is one of those sports which doesn't require you to be one gender or another. And even with virtual racing, there's so much preparation that's involved, so many skills that are needed that you need when you're actually out racing at a track for real, in a car that's on the track with those tires, with that car crew, with those drivers that you've got alongside you. So it's definitely a place for women to be able to be seen and hopefully noticed, so that they can be picked up and brought into, if it's not just the virtual world and the simulation world, further on from there.
Great, thank you, fantastic. Thank you very much, Lena Gade.
No problem.
A quick look at one of our drivers in the studio here. We had 2 sims set up, but of course only half the team is racing here, Lewis. So one of our teams, the IDEX Sport team, is actually being represented elsewhere right now, and it's empty. But good to see Signatech with their driver, and unfortunately at the moment sitting there. Not quite sure he's those fireproofs, but maybe we'll have a chat with them in a few moments' time, find out how hot it is. Studio is pretty hot anyway. Let's now have a look at what we've seen so far out of the 24-hour Le Mans Virtual. At 3 o'clock local time in Paris, the start of the very first 24-hour Le Mans Virtuel, and unfortunately Tom Dillman took too much of an advantage across the start-finishing line. That gave all a penalty to the By-Colles machine. Nick Tandy led the Porsche's armada away, and unfortunately Brendan Hartley was the first man to be claimed by the braking zone at Indianapolis. Fernando Alonso got together with Simona Di Silvestro. That was the start of dreadful news for the FARB All in Sports team. Pachito Lopez was an early star. The car wasn't qualified particularly well, but once he got into his rhythm, the Toyota Gazoo Racing started to carve through the field, and the Argentine racing out of Monaco did a great job. Corvette to the front of the field, thanks to Jan Jujovski. And suddenly we had a challenge against Porsche. There was action all the way through the field. Williams Esports doing a great job with Rebellion, combining both the real and the virtual. Then Pachito Lopez gave over to Kamui Kobayashi, and from third the Toyota started to plummet. Kobayashi with not the same experience and pace as his Argentine teammate, and unfortunately that car dropped down the field. 2 sim drivers having a great tussle. Erhan Jujovski in the Romain Grosjean Corvette and the Works Porsche of Tommy Usgaard. He sat behind the Corvette for most of his first stint and then decided that move to put him ahead and to stretch the advantage. By-Colles also had work to do moving up through the field. And this was the comeback drive of Esteban Guerri, the World Touring Car driver, has had great form in sim racing and put on a great show for us. Rudy van Vuren further back, fighting with the all-female team with Sophia Flörsch at the wheel. That's Jota Team Redline car with not as much luck as the Redline machine at the very head of the field. A small mistake from the 92 Porsche of Jeremy Bouteloup. Didn't lose a position though, although he was under huge pressure from Andrea Lotterer. Lotterer got alongside, but that changed again quite soon after. Lotterer sharing the car with Neil Jarni. Then the most remarkable thing that we've ever seen in sim racing, Simon Pagenaud having a problem with his wheel, stopping at the side of the track, swapping simulators, and then getting himself back to pit lane without force feedback before a red flag for technical issues, and we reset the server on R Factor 2, and we will be going racing very shortly. And leading the race before the red flag was the 2C's Motorsport machine with Devin Browner at the wheel, but he was due into the pits at that time. There is Lando Norris. Now Lando talking away because of course he's live streaming himself on his own feed, so you can be watching that. Get in touch, go and chat to them. There is Juan Pablo Montoya, who had just taken over from Simon Pagenaud, and Jan. That's Jan Magnussen, isn't it? Getting more and more Nordic with his beard, and racing presumably for Corvette. I didn't see his name on the wheel.
Yes, alongside his nephew Dennis Lind, who's got a few drivers out there.
Now, in very important news for everybody, I know it's been a bit of a bone of contention on Twitter, online, but we will be seeing the Fernando Alonso and Rubens Barrichello car back in the race. They have been allowed to re-enter, and they'll be all getting together, because I'm pretty sure Fernando would have gone to bed by now, and everyone will have been relaxing. But they have lost, of course, a lot of time after not being able to get their car back to the pits. But Fernando Alonso and Rubens Barrichello and the rest of that team will be back to entertain us. So that is fantastic news, and a great decision from our race direction to get those guys back. Here is a guy who didn't do a lot of sim racing and didn't really feel like he needed to do a lot of sim racing, Nelson Piquet Jr., but this reignited his desire. It looks like a pretty good rig as well that he's got there, and we will see him back